Larry Krueger, probably the most the most honest, independent, unbiased 49er observer in the marketplace. Probably the most informed, not non-bought and paid for opinion in the marketplace. So I'm glad to be that. I'm glad to be here. And we got a great hour for you as we talk a little 49er football. The big story of the day, of course, I was down in Santa Clara. We had training camp practice number 14, 15, whatever it is. Niners getting ready to board the Bird to head to Vegas to take on the Raiders. They will have a joint practice off tomorrow, joint practice on Thursday from Nevada, early morning practice to try to beat the Heat. And then they'll be they'll be off on Friday, and then they're there at the Raiders Stadium. There was it Reliant Stadium, or what, Allegiant Field? What is it? I forget exactly the name of the Raiders Stadium, but the Raiders Stadium in Vegas will house Raiders Niners preseason game number 2. So we got a lot to get to today. Niners working out more wide receivers. We'll recap camp. We'll play a bunch of cuts. You'll get a chance to hear what Robert Saleh and everybody said today from the podium. But probably the biggest story in Ninerland this afternoon is Tim Kawakami's piece on Jauan Jennings. The hold-in continues for Jennings. Don't call it a hold-in. He's hurt. I'll call it a hold-in because it's a hold-in. It's also a stalemate for the 28-year-old wide receiver who's currently the 42nd highest paid receiver in the NFL, and that's probably where he belongs. He's probably roughly the 42nd best receiver in pro football. So the two sides, according to Tim, are not close to signing a deal. Tim was fed this line: the timing is all wrong, according to the 49ers. And this is very much a Niner-centric side of the story for sure. There was no quotes in this article at all from Rosenhaus. This kind of, it sounds like Tim picked up the phone, called John Lynch, and then just didn't quote him. But it sounds like this is coming directly from the 49ers. So you got to remember, this is the 49ers side of things. But they say the timing is all wrong. And, that today we did see Jennings there. He was working out off to the side. We didn't see him doing much, but it's funny because Tim's like, JJ has a real calf injury, which is why he's out. Does anybody even beg to ask the question of, if JJ has this calf injury that was so, it's long-standing, goes back to the spring, and here it is in July, August now, we're in training camp. It's already, they reported in July, it's now August, and now, the season's just around the corner, and he still has the calf injury. Well, if it's a real calf injury, wouldn't that right there make you not want to sign Jauan Jennings? You have a receiver that, could be the 35th highest paid receiver, or could be the 35th best receiver, but he's being paid as the 42nd best receiver. And he's holding out or holding in because him and Drew Rosenhaus's agent are playing super hardball with the Niners because they think they have the leverage, because the Niners have a bunch of injuries. So Rosenhaus thinks he has leverage. JJ thinks he has leverage. And they're playing super hardball with this hold in. But the Niners are pushing back, saying the timing's all wrong. And I think ultimately the Niners have said over and over, we love JJ. But guess what? Compliments don't spend. You can't spend compliments. So they can compliment him all they want, but money talks, like in any business. And they're not willing to come to the table with any kind of real money. According to Tim, the two sides are not close to a deal. It doesn't sound like a deal is going to happen. And it's going to be really interesting. He's set to make $7.5 million. It's year 2 of a 2-year deal that he signed in May of 2024. And Tim is singing the same song that Lynch is singing, that JJ has a real calf injury. But once again, if he's got a lingering calf injury and you've got a beat up group of wide receivers and you're already paying too much to injured wide receivers, why would a guy with a lingering calf injury who has a contract on the books for $7.5 million make you want to, I don't know, give him more? Why would that make sense? So he's missed 10 practices. There is no end in sight. It's a very interesting situation on a lot of fronts. And I definitely want you guys to chime in the chat. I'm sure there are people in the chat that would have some comments on JJ. Greg says, "Hey, Larry, you're boring me." Greg, I'm sorry. What can I say? Sorry that I'm boring you. But ultimately, it really comes down to how's this going to end? What's the common ground here? So we're supposed to believe that Jennings showed up. He was in awesome shape. He looked great. But after only 3 training camp practices, because this is not money related, they're telling us this is injury related. We're supposed to believe them. So if they're being truthful and it's really injury related, so we're supposed to believe that a guy that had a calf injury all of the spring, all of OTAs, shows up for training camp and 3 practices is all he gets in before he has a recurrence of the calf injury. And you're telling me that there's a possibility of a contract extension? Does that sound like a receiver that you would want to extend? A guy who had a calf injury that cost him the entire OTAs and then showed up for 3 training camp practices, and it's recurring so bad that he hasn't played in weeks? He's missed 10 practices. Does that sound like a guy that you would want to extend? So I mean that's just common sense. If the injury is legit, why are you in a rush to sign a contract to another injured receiver? I got to ask that question. Where's the wisdom in signing another hurt receiver if he's really hurt? See how that works? See how that goes? So Shanahan said JJ has not asked to be traded. The report was coming into training camp that he either wants to be given a raise or he wants to be traded. So is a public trade request coming from Jauan Jennings? And then ultimately, isn't Jennings just doing what Ayuk did last year? Ayuk showed up, did his hold in, made nice with everybody, and the Niners caved. They gave him the $30 million contract that they're already regretting. But he staged a hold in last year and won. I think if JJ was watching, and I'm sure he was, he probably said, I wonder what I'll do. Oh, yeah, I'll do that. I'll just do what Ayuk did. I'll just have a hold in myself, and maybe it will work for me. But he's not Ayuk. And that's where this comes down. So it's like, let's talk about the possibilities here. The 49ers have him under contract for $7.5 million. So they could pay him. I mean, they could rip up his contract and give him more money this year, but that's a terrible precedent to set. So wait, the contract that you sign means nothing if you outperform it? That's basically what you would be you would be reaffirming the precedent that you set with Ayuk almost to some degree by letting him hold in and get what he wants. You're almost like begging. If you pay JJ, you're almost begging for somebody to do this to you again, because you're basically telling people, you want to get paid, hold in. Ayuk did, he got paid. JJ did, he got paid. So I don't think the 49ers want to go down that road. They don't want to set that precedent. So the hold in is very interesting. Now, if he wants more money on his contract this year, it's like, bro, you just signed that contract last year. Why would I pay you more? What's your word worth? You put your name on the dotted line. So it's like, it doesn't really work. It's a bad precedent for the 49ers to rip up the $7.5 million contract and add more money to his contract this year. Just a bad precedent. Then I'm thinking, okay, well, what would the Niners like to do? The Niners would like to take probably a nice little compromise, little short-term, 1 year. Hey, JJ, how about this? We'll give you 2 years and $22 million. But we'll make it look like a 1 year deal so you can be like a $20 million receiver. and we'll play these cap games so your agent can be over here going, look, I got my guy this. But in reality, it's very little change over here. That potentially could be happening. But ultimately, it's like Jauan Jennings is holding in. Is he getting nothing for it? Is he just going to come back and play? See, the question I would have is, how does this work? Because if Jennings, the Niners don't want to rip up his contract this year and give him more money because it sets a terrible precedent. If I'm Jennings, I don't want to sign a short-term little gain deal and bypass my free agency and maybe delay free agency. So do you think it's going to help Jauan to be a free agent 2 years from now when he's closer to the twilight of his career? No, he needs to cash in right now. He needs, with no Ayuk and all these injuries, he needs to show up, put up good numbers, and head to free agency and have somebody give him 3 years, $45 million. The talk is that he wants $20 million a year. He's not a $20 million a year receiver. He's just not. And people will say, oh, he's third and Jauan, and he's so gutty and this and that. He's never had 500 yards in a season until last year. The 2 previous seasons before last year, he had 2 combined touchdowns in the 2 seasons. So, I mean, the production he's not a $20 million receiver, not based on production. So this is going to be interesting. It's like what he wants is a big money, long-term deal, right? That's what he wants. And for the 49ers, why are you going to do that? Why would you do that? So I really don't think a deal's coming, because if you give him more money on this year's contract, then you're setting a terrible precedent because you're ripping up an existing contract. He's under contract for $7.5 million. Like, and if who should be watching this with a keen eye? Colton McKivitz. Colton McKivitz is JJ. They're the same. They're the exact same guy right now. They're both guys headed to free agency in March, in the final year of their deal. If I'm Colton McKivitz, if they rip up JJ's contract and give him a new deal, what does that say for me? So what? The guy who doesn't show up and doesn't, who holds in, gets the money, but me, the hardworking offensive lineman who shows up and practices, doesn't. So the Niners can't do that, right? They can't set that precedent. And I don't think JJ is going to want a short-term deal. Why would you want a short-term deal with just a couple more $1 million? How's that help you? You're going to bypass your free agency, your big payday. You got one chance at a big payday. It's coming up next March. You're going to bypass that to sign what, a 2-year short-term extension for just a little bit of a bump out of what, the love of 49er football? I realize this is the only franchise JJ's ever known, but that seems like like something that probably is not in his best interest. And I can't see Drew Rosenhaus allowing him to sign some moderate short-term extension that is exactly what the 49ers would want. You think 49ers want to go big money long-term? No. Now, the Kawakami piece has a number of interesting quotes in here. One of them says Jennings probably wants a deal for this year or next that would make him a top 20 paid wide receiver. Well, first of all, is he a top 20 receiver? No. Is Jauan Jennings a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL? No. There's no championship team that would make him the number 1 receiver in football. He's a 4.77 40 guy who's an incredible tough guy who's been an incredible player in a short amount of time, but there's limits to what he is. He's good, there's no question, but he's not a number 1 receiver, and he's not the best number 2. I mean, Philly has A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Is he better than either one of those guys? No. So he's not a top 20 receiver. He shouldn't be paid like a top 20 receiver. He's a top 50 receiver, and he's being paid like a top 50 receiver. And if you want to fight it out, we could. And if you don't believe me, go print up your own list. Go look at a list of the top wide receivers. There's fantasy lists everywhere you look. Type in fantasy football. I mean, granted, fantasy football is different than regular football, but you'll get a list of wide receivers, and you can decide for yourself how many receivers are better than Jauan Jennings, and do a little research, and you take a look at some of the numbers and come back to me. What you're going to come back with is, Krug, he's probably not, he's the 42nd highest paid receiver, but he's probably more like maybe a 30th or 35th best wide receiver. Okay, I'm with you. He's slightly, that's the reality. What's the truth? The truth is that Jauan Jennings is a hell of a football player, and he's slightly underpaid. But guess what? There's other guys who are slightly underpaid as well. And Niners aren't ripping up their contracts. And to me, if this were me, if I were running the Niners, I wouldn't feel better about JJ. I'd feel worse. He's truly playing super hardball with his high-powered agent. In your darkest hour, he's trying to absolutely put the screws to you. In your darkest hour, when you have, Ayuk out, Debo just left, you don't have wide receiver depth, then we'll stick it to them with a holdout when they absolutely have to need, when their plan is to use us in September, and we're going to be utilized as the number one receiver potentially for a month or so until Ayuk's back. So, we'll use that as our leverage. It's hardball, man. It's big time hardball. And I don't know how this is going to end. Here's the other question. Does he even have a market? Are there teams that want him? Is there anybody beating down the Niners' door saying, give me JJ? Now, I saw a rumor this morning that would send him to Miami, JJ and a 6th-round pick for Tyreek Hill. Oh, my God. Are you kidding me? What an unbelievable deal that would be for the 49ers. You would get just one of the best game breakers in the NFL for Jauan Jennings and a 6th-round pick. I would do that every day, and everybody would do that. I don't know if the Niners would because they love JJ so much, but everybody should do that. Everybody should make that trade. Every reasonable personnel man in the world would be like, give me Tyreek. Yes, I'll take Tyreek. So does he have a market? Is there anybody? I mean, last year when Ayuk was holding in, there was all kinds of rumors. New England wanted him. Cleveland wanted him. All kinds of talk. Pittsburgh. Remember, I got people from Pittsburgh calling me 3 days a week in last summer about Brandon Ayuk. There was so much more scuttle about a trade. Now, partially because we believe that Ayuk was open to being traded, where JJ, I think, would rather be here. And I think the Niners have made it clear they love him and they would rather keep him here. But at what price? And here's the other question. I don't think, some of these things are just not possible. The 49ers are not going to stick it to JJ and just say, screw off, we're not giving you anything. They're not going to do it. Why? Because they're smart. Jauan Jennings is one of the most powerful voices in their locker room. They know it. Jauan Jennings is one of the most influential guys in their room. So they're not going to screw over one of the most influential guys in their room, which is another bit of leverage that Rosenhaus and JJ feel like they have and probably do have on the 49ers. So they do not want to win this thing so one-sided that he has to lose face, tuck tail, come back to the locker room, no extension, no extra bump of any kind, and he's just got to eat it. And it's just like, oh, well, JJ held out. Or maybe they're just going to pretend that, you know what, he never had any kind of contract issue. Maybe they'll lose so bad that Rosenhaus will just be like, hey, man, we never had a contract issue. It was always the calf. Maybe that's why they're holding to the calf story so dramatically, because they're like, you know what, we got to give JJ a way to save face. After we opt not to pay him and he doesn't get his extension and he's got to roll back into the locker room, he's going to lose face. So how does he not lose face? Well, we'll just say it's the calf injury, so there's maybe that. Maybe he just comes back from the calf injury and just plays, but I don't think so. I don't think JJ is going to be happy in the room all year long and be a good teammate and a good guy and a smiley face as they basically give him the stiff arm and say, no, So they can't just totally be like, nope, nothing. We're not going to give you anything. We're going to pretend you didn't ask for any kind of a salary bump of any kind. We're not going to give it to you, and we're just going to ignore you and pretend you don't exist. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that because he's too powerful. They're not going to do that and keep him. Okay. So they won't just shine him and tell him go to hell and then expect him to be a good actor in the locker room. They won't. They're smarter than that. They know what they have in JJ. They know how powerful he is. They're not going to just say, we're not paying you and you're just going to do what we say and you're just going to like it. No, they're not going to play, even though he's playing super hardball with them through his agent and demanding a trade or a contract. And if that is indeed the demand, we'll find out. They're playing super hardball on their end. The Niners could easily play super hardball back, but they won't. They won't, because they understand that having JJ in the room unhappy is a net negative. So they're not going to do that. They're also not going to rip up his contract this year because it's a bad precedent. They're also probably not going to be able to get him to sign a short-term reasonable extension, because why would he bypass his free agency for a short-term just a slight monetary gain? They're probably not going to do that because why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you, if you're, there's all kinds of angles on this thing, but I don't think JJ's coming back without a contract extension of some kind and just, hey, just show up and we'll pretend this never happened. No, it's not going to go down that way. I don't think the Niners are going to give him a big money long-term deal because I don't think he's worth it. And I think they understand. And if his calf injury is legit, as they're saying it is, all the more reason not to give him a big money long-term extension. What, are you going to sign another hurt receiver and put yourself in cap hell with more hurt receivers? I mean, the last thing the 49ers need right now are more high-priced hurt wide receivers. That's the last thing they need, and they know it. So they're not going to go long-term, and does a short-term deal that takes away his big free agent off-season come March, is he going to be interested in that? I don't think so. So I think what it comes down to, and it's interesting, Kawakami obviously has a source with the Niners. He has a couple of very interesting quotes here. He says the 49ers likely don't want to give JJ any raise, but they need him badly. Thus, he's explaining a little bit of the leverage, okay? They don't want to give him any raise. I wouldn't give him any raise either. I wouldn't want to. I think he's appropriately paid. But as I said before, Lynch loves him. Shanahan loves him. The locker room loves him. The ownership loves him. He's their guy. If they could clone him, they would. He's a competitor. He's a tough ass. He blocks guys into the bench. I mean, we all love JJ for what he brings to the table, which is violence and winning. And this is the guy that showed up on Super Bowl Sunday when the other guys didn't. This is the guy you can depend on. Third and Jauan. I get it. Believe me. There's a lot of people like, Krueger, anti-Jauan. I'm not anti-Jauan. I just don't believe that. I think he's fairly compensated. I think he's like the 35th best receiver in football, and I think he's the 42nd highest paid. I would give him a slight bump if I could, and that's it. Period. Slight bump on his contract, not this year, next year. But why would he go for that? Why would he go for a slight bump and bypass free agency? I mean, he'd have to be ridiculously short-sighted. He'd have to love the 49ers more than any of us do. These guys are mercenaries at the end of the day. He didn't grow up in San Francisco. He's from Tennessee. He doesn't need to play for the Niners. He just would rather play for the Niners. But TK in the article says there should be a compromise by August 26th. That's interesting. There should be a compromise. Even though there's all this back and forth, there should be a compromise. But what if there isn't? And what if there is no compromise to be had here? As I'm saying, the compromise would be a short-term extension, but the Niners don't want to give him more money this year because the precedent it sets. And why would he want an extension that takes him out of March contract negotiations next year? So what Tim is suggesting is very specific here, which almost makes me think that maybe somebody said this is the deal. And he's saying the Niners take on another year or they tack on, I should say, not take on, they tack on. You know, he's under contract. Jauan Jennings under contract this year, $7.5 million. Tim saying the Niners in this, phantom resolution that he's discussing here would tack on another year to JJ's deal, and make it a $22 million deal and maybe shoot him $5 million in bonus money this year. And so then his side can Rosenhaus and his, agents over there can be like, hey man, we got JJ a 1 year, $22 million deal. He's a $20 million wide receiver. And in reality, it's just cap, shenanigans and moving money around. And it's not really, it's like a public win for Rosenhaus, but it's like a win for Parag and the organization. Something like that is probably what we're headed to. But man, what gymnastics, what theatrics for just pay the guy a little bit of money. And then, once again, you're going to give this guy an extension. And it's like Shanahan was asked, well, what about this injury? You guys, I don't think it's too serious. Okay. You don't think it's too serious. Does he is it a real injury? Go ask Jauan. That doesn't sound like a real injury. So there's a lot going on here. For sure. The other thing is you say, well, is there a team that wants him? Is there a market for him? And I brought that up before. Does he have a legitimate market? Well, I'll say this. Jauan Jennings in Tennessee is a star. The Vols are the biggest team in Tennessee, not the Titans. And if the Titans were smart, they would probably come offer the Niners a second or third round pick for Jauan. Why? Because Cam Ward needs Jauan Jennings, and Tennessee probably needs Jauan Jennings to sell tickets. So, I mean, that would be the win-win. Because you're not going to, do you want to sign Jauan you just signed Ayuk to a $30 million contract. Are you going to sign Jauan to a big money deal even next offseason? You're paying him $7.5 million this year. Do you want to sign him to a big money long-term deal? I don't think so. They probably want to sign him to a reasonable short-term deal, 2 or 3 year deal. But if it's like, hey, man, I'm 28, I'm 29, I want to get paid. I need to get paid. Then he may have to go somewhere else. And where else could he go? Okay, well, it's hard to say. I mean, it's really hard to say. Pittsburgh always seems like they're interested in wide receivers, but why would they be interested? They just added DK Metcalf. Miami's got a lot of speed at wide receiver with Hill and Waddle. He seems like he'd be a perfect complement to them if they wanted him. Tennessee would be ideal. It would be ideal for ticket sales. It'd be ideal for Cam Ward. I mean, Cam Ward is a good young quarterback and a great receiver like JJ, who's going to sell out for every ball and great catch radius. I mean, he'd be ideal for Cam Ward. Cam Ward would love to have Jauan Jennings. And then, of course, the other name is Washington. Washington has Adam Peters. He drafted Jauan Jennings, and he probably has an affinity for Jauan Jennings. And, man, I mean, he's got Debo. He wanted Ayuk. Maybe he would want JJ as well. I don't think we're going to see a trade, but it is kind of set up for either some bogus 1 year deal that looks great to, for Rosenhaus, so he can say, oh, I got my guy and thing, but it's really a nominal, it's a much ado about nothing kind of a thing. So everybody can kind of save face. That's probably the compromise that we're going to see probably on August 25th or 26th. Okay. But if it really came down to tear up my contract this year, I don't think the Niners want to do that. And if it really came down to a short-term, deal where the Niners gave him a few more million and he bypassed his free agency, I can't see Jauan doing that. So then it's a matter of, would they give him a long-term deal? And I don't think that's in the Niners' best interest, despite his great value to the team. So that's where it sits. And it is one of the more interesting stories for sure. The 49ers, by the way, I mean, they worked out 4 wide receivers today. And I was looking at the list, and it is not an impressive list. I mean, we're talking about Frank Darby, who's 27 years of age, was a 6th-round pick in 2021. He's been out of the NFL. His last year in the NFL was 2022. So he didn't play in the NFL the last 2 years. So they brought in Frank Darby. They brought in Kwame Lassiter, who, believe it or not, I scouted his father, who was a great safety for Kansas. The son, Kwame Lassiter, is 27. He's a 5'11", 185-pound receiver. Nothing special. Medium size, 4.5 speed. Nothing great there. Played for the Memphis Showboats. Then there's Jalen Camp, a 6'2", 220-pound, 27-year-old receiver who was a 6th-round pick in 2021. He's played for, I think the Niners would be like his 6th NFL team. Played collegiately at Georgia Tech. And then there's Malik Turner. And Niner fans know Malik Turner. He was a Niner last year, and he was a Niner in the 22 season. He's a 29-year-old, camp body type receiver. I mean, I don't want to insult him, but I mean, these are not the kinds of guys that are likely to make the roster. They're just, hey, let's get through training camp. Who's out there that's in shape? And that's why you're there, keep interviewing or keep working out all these UFL guys, because they're in shape. They're in football shape. Kwame Lassiter Jr., the second, just played for the Memphis Showboats. So, and I believe Camp might have been in the UFL as well. So, that's why they're looking at UFL guys, because they're in shape. Not everybody's in shape. They don't have time to, sign somebody and have them get into shape. So they have to have somebody who's in shape. I guarantee you, when Lynch is calling around to agents looking for receivers for these workout, tryout camp exercises, he's like, hey, is your client? Yeah, my client wants a job. Oh, he wants it. Is he in shape? Yeah, he's in shape. Has he been running routes? Is he in football shape? We're in the middle of camp. We have a game in a couple of days. Is he ready to play in these are the questions that you have to ask. And I guarantee you, Frank Darby's agent and Lassiter and Camp and Turner's agent. Yes. My guy will be there. First flight. He'll be there. Great attitude. You'll love him. He's ready to go. He's eager. He's excited. He's fired, and that's how this works. But this is going to be interesting. We thought we were going to get a summer with no 49er holdouts, no 49er, contract drama, and nope, we're not. It looks like this is going to come to a head. Now, it could be very quiet, right? It could be very quiet. He could continue to hold out, and then suddenly on the 26th, the Niners could just say, the calf is better, and we got a new agreement, and it's, as it's a 1-year, $22 million deal, and it's really just moving money around. He gets a slight bump, a few more million. But I can't imagine that they would rip up the deal for this year because of the precedent it would set. I can't imagine that they would that JJ would sign a short-term, extension and bypass free agency. So I think any deal they give him is going to be a this year deal, which that's not, makes me think they're not going to give him a deal. And then because they don't want to break that precedent, they don't want to give him a this year deal, but there's no way he's going to bypass free agency. And I don't think there's any way they're going to give him a big money deal that would make it easy for him to bypass free agency. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of a situation where he's either going to get some nominal little deal that makes it a little bit more financially palatable, but he's still a free agent at the end of the year, or he's going to come back, not get a new deal, and just be, a good soldier and, tuck tail and, chalk up the L. And, I don't see that happening. They're not going to make him lose face in the room with his teammates. Or he's going to ask for a public demand of a trade, and they're going to acquiesce. So we got something to watch. We got something to watch for coming up here in the next few weeks. All right. So I know that was a long, wordy explanation, and I'm sure there's lots of you that have comments and thoughts on this on this. But I have a couple other thoughts that I want to from today that we're going to get to. I was down in Santa Clara today for practice, and I did a video before I walked out on the practice field today about just kind of a recap, or just kind of a recap of some of the things that I've been talking about, that I've been reading about with all these wide receivers. There's been a lot of speculation, are the Niners going to go after other receivers, with this, not just the JJ thing. And obviously you got Debo moved on, and you've got injuries. Jordan Watkins is going to miss a month. They're in kind of a weird pickle when it comes to receivers, because they could really use a receiver to get through camp, but then they also have Ayuk coming back. They think JJ's coming back. Cowing came back today. Jordan Watkins, they love. He'll be back in a month. So they're kind of, but then at the same time, they're getting so close to the season that they can't leave themselves short wide receiver wise. And a lot of the writers are starting to ask, hey, what about these other options? So, and I get it. I mean, Watkins has got the high ankle sprain. Demarcus Robinson's facing a 3-game suspension. Jacob Cowing has got a hamstring. Who knows? He could go at any second. Ayuk has got a knee. He's probably out till Thanksgiving. JJ's got whatever JJ's got. So they're pressed for wide receivers, and they got all kinds of guys rolling in. They're working out guys left and right, and they've got, Russell Gage is there, and Tariq Owens is there, and they had Andy Isabella and St. Brown, and they're cycling through a bunch of receivers. So these are the receivers that are out there right now. And you guys tell me in the chat if there's a receiver that you think you would go after. Okay. One is Amari Cooper. He's 31. He played for Cleveland and Buffalo last year. He made 44 catches for the 2 of them and 4 touchdowns. He played in 3 playoff games for Buffalo. He did very little. So he's 31. That's not very old. Matt Barrows asked about Amari Cooper, and Shanahan's like, yeah, well, we might sign a guy, but then we might regret it later, and this and that. And they're worried about the cap, and they also don't want to block Jordan Watkins or Cowing or their young receivers from getting on the field. So that's one thing. But I think with Cooper, it's more about how much is it going to cost. Okay, so he's out there if you want him. Then there's Gabe Davis, who they brought in for a workout. He's 26. Now, I like this name a lot because he's 26. But the Niners looked at him, didn't sign him. Steelers looked at him, didn't sign him. So maybe he did not recover from the knee injury, the knee surgery, that he had in the offseason, or is not ready to roll yet. Something tells me if Gabe Davis was ready to roll, somebody would have signed him. He's not been signed. He's out there. He's actually expressed that he thinks he fits the Niners system and would be a good fit. I like him if he's healthy, but you know what? I wasn't at the workout that the Niners held for him, and I don't know what he looked like. People are throwing out Kendrick Bourne, who's almost assuredly going to get cut by the New England Patriots. And the Niners, I could see really wanting Kendrick Bourne. Why? Because they wanted Jeff Wilson. They wanted Keyshawn Vaughn. I mean, they just want anybody who knows their system at this point. The season's starting in a couple weeks. We're inside of a month till week 1. They don't want to coach him up. They don't want a young, talented guy who they've got to coach up. They want somebody who could walk in and play game, minute 1. I mean, they signed Keyshawn Vaughn Saturday afternoon, and he played Saturday night. They're looking for guys that they can just throw on the field right now. Kendrick Bourne's 30. If you wanted him now, you'd probably have to trade for him. I wouldn't trade anything for him. He's going to get cut on the 26th. You could wait for that day to come about. But this guy tore his ACL in 2023, and he has not been the same since. He had 28 catches last year and 1 touchdown. So, yeah, he's only 30, but he tore the ACL, and he's lost a lot of his juice since. So, to me, Bourne I think, I could see them saying, yeah, Bourne, because they know Bourne. But I don't think Bourne, the same way Jeff Wilson is not the same Jeff Wilson from a few years ago. Watching him on the practice field, that was abundantly clear. This guy is not the same guy that he was. I've watched enough in New England. Bourne has lost a step, and maybe more than a step. So he's out there if you want him. He'll be out there at the cutdown because there's no way he's making New England's roster. Then there's Kadarius Toney, who's 26 and really talented, but I mean, he's crazy. I mean, he may have some legal entanglements, and he's got some off-field issues. But if you're just looking for a guy who can play, I mean, this guy can play. I mean, this guy can stop and start, and he'll make you miss. I mean, he may line up wrong. He may make some bad decisions on the field, off the field. I mean, he's not a Niner. I can't see the Niners going for him. Teams like Kansas City go for guys like Toney all the time. The Niners just steer clear of these guys. But as far as talent goes, this is probably the most talented receiver as far as age, explosion. His best football is still maybe ahead of him, where the other guy's best football is in the past. But they probably don't want any part of Toney. Then there's Tyler Boyd, who's 30. He's out there, pretty good player, pretty good slot, receiver. I think he's interesting. Then there's Brandon Powell, who they worked out recently. Then there's Romeo Douglas, Romeo Dobbs, I should say. Romeo Dobbs from Green Bay. There's a lot of talk Green Bay is going to trade Romeo Dobbs. To me, that's the guy. I know would cost you. You'd have to trade next year's third-round draft choice probably to get Romeo Dobbs. He's a free agent at the end of the year, so that probably wouldn't be real popular. But I think Dobbs is easily the best receiver that potentially could change teams in August. So he's really exciting to me. I would probably go for Romeo Dobbs. And then, their Bleacher Report had a Jauan Jennings to the Dolphins for Tyreek Hill speculation. I can't see that happening. It would be Jennings in a 26 sixth-round pick to Miami. This is according to Bleacher Report. They had 4 random trades for JJ. So that obviously would be exciting, but I don't see that. To me is the least likely. So I would say the most likely is, if they're going to add anybody, it's probably a Kendrick Bourne type, but I don't think he's going to do anything because I think he's lost his wheels. If it was me, I would trade a pick for Romeo Dobbs, or maybe if I could trade some combination of a fourth and a conditional pick, something like that. One pick this year, next year, one pick the year after, something like that. I mean, Dobbs is the receiver I'd go after. He's the guy who's healthy. He's the guy who's 26 and young. He's from Nevada, so if you wanted to sign him long term, you probably could. So that's the guy. That would be the guy that I would have interest in. Okay, so that's the big story in Ninerland is the JJ deal and what's going on with JJ, and is he going to be there? Is he not going to be there? And we just don't know how it's all going to go. Is he going to sign? Is he not going to sign? What's the deal? I mean, that's the question. We don't really know if JJ is going to be there or if he's not going to be there, but that's going to be something to watch for sure. Is Jauan Jennings going to be, a 49er this year, or is he going to hold out and not be a 49er? So I think that's the question. That is the question for sure. Okay. Now we also want to, let's see here. We also want to talk a little bit about some of the other stories today, and then play you guys some of the cuts as well. Okay, let's see here. What we want to do. Okay, so a couple other thoughts here on this. Let's see. I want to make sure. Let's get the other screen up. And where is my other screen? Let's see. Okay. So there's a couple other stories today that I think are kind of interesting, that I definitely want to hit and talk a little bit about. Let's do this though. Where is that other screen here? Okay. There we go. Sorry about this. All right. So here's what we wanted to go with. We wanted to play you guys a couple of the clips. So what we'll do here is we'll share the screen. And this is some of the best clips of the day today. And then we'll get into a couple of the other stories. Here's Kalia Davis today. And I asked him to reflect a little bit on his season. Here's what Kalia Davis had to say. We'll try this again.
What's the last year and a half been like? You had a great camp last year, then you hurt the knee, then you came back, you had a nice recovery, but this year it seems like you're putting it all together. What's this camp in the last year been like for you?
Man, like you said, it was just unfortunate, but I worked my way to get back on the field, and when you're coming back off of a surgery, it's just you need a few weeks to get back to yourself, and it was kind of tough, but I enjoyed taking the field with my guys last year and actually getting the experience I got. I played 13 games last year, so that was huge for me because I was able to take that into the offseason and work on things and get better. So just trying to build on it this year.
He is going to be. I think he's destined to have a really good year. I think Kalia Davis is going to give them some pass rush inside and really be a factor. Now, last year he was about to take off, and then he got hurt. He wound up coming back, and he played 13 games. He had an interception. He did some good things, but I think this year he looks like he's ready for takeoff. Another guy who I don't know what you guys thought about the game the other night, but the guy that I just absolutely thought was fantastic was Tatum Bethune. And I asked Robert Saleh today about Bethune, and here's what Saleh had to say. And Bethune to me looks like a starter. Here's Robert Saleh on Tatum Bethune.
Robert Bethune looks faster, I think, from last year to this year, maybe by a step and a half. You weren't here last year, but what do you see for him? You've seen a lot of good linebackers.
You know what? Rookies, you go back to him being a rookie, he may not have seen it as fast, so he felt a step slow. And I always tell people, if you're thinking, you're not executing your 40 time, right? He comes out of college, he's running a certain time, he plays with a certain speed, but if you're thinking, you're not utilizing all that. And I think he's playing a little bit more without thought. Now he's not all the way there yet. There's still some things that he's learning every day, but when these young men can play without thought, especially the ones that are fresh from college, and they can utilize all their God-given ability, they flash and they pop on tape because of their speed. And Tatum's no different. He's had a really nice offseason, and we bounced him around a little bit from Mike to Sam to Will, and trying to get him to have some versatility to his game. But he's been doing a really nice job.
Yeah, I mean, Bethune looks great. He really does. And he makes lots of plays. And it's just like the other night, it just seemed like every time I looked up, there was Tatum Bethune, standing in front of somebody, making a play. And he's an impressive player. Another guy, who I asked Saleh about. Saleh told me, I asked him about Sebastian Valdez last week. And I'm like, hey, what do you think of Valdez? And he's like, we're going to find out when Denver gets here if Valdez is, what's real and what isn't. Which I thought was an interesting comment. And so today I asked him to kind of follow up on that because he said, wait for Denver. And then he came in today and I asked him about it. Here it is.
Robert, I asked you about Valdez last week and you said, we'll have to wait to see till Denver rolls in to see what's real and what isn't. What'd you think of Valdez?
He did a good job. It's he went out, he competed, made a couple plays. Some things he's got to get cleaned up, but overall it was a good outing for him.
Yeah. So he's not, he doesn't want to say lots about these undrafted guys because it's, it's early and the last thing you don't want them to feel like, oh yeah, man, I've got this thing, man. I got this thing on lock. No. That's not what you want if you're a coach. You want these guys to feel like, you know what? I need to up my game. I need to show up and be really good today, because if I'm not really good today, I could be gone. So, they're always going to kind of downplay. They're always going to downplay, how good their rookies look if they possibly can. It's just kind of the name of the game. You don't want to play it up. You want to play it down. And it's really more about, you don't want your guys to let up. You want to make sure that your guys are balling and playing really hard and are focused. So, is he going to say good things? Is he going to say bad things? He's never going to say bad things, but he said some good things, but not too much good, not too many good things. Let's hear from Deommodore Lenoir. He went on with Richard Sherman and had some interesting things to say. Here's Lenoir off Coach Yak's Twitter here, talking about his mindset coming into the season. This is one of the Niners' better players. He's moving outside. He has not played. He's a great slot corner who's played no slot corner at all this summer. He has been outside exclusively, and he stopped by with Sherman and Richard Sherman. And here's how it went.
So speaking of many years to come, you've been putting on good tape for a number of years. Obviously, like I told you before, you played the best during the biggest games in the playoffs, getting those interceptions. Talk about your mindset coming into this year.
It's just really just being a lockdown corner. I feel like I didn't transition to this role to play, to be this cornerback one. So, what's needed for a cornerback one is usually to shut down the best receiver. And I feel like I've just been ready for that challenge, since I made my name for myself in this league.
So that was a little bit of demo right there with Richard Sherman. But there's another one as well. It's a pretty good cut. And here is Demo. And he talks about his goals for the year. I mean, this guy's gotten close to the Super Bowl, but it hasn't happened. He hasn't gotten there. He hasn't been able. I mean, he's gotten there. Hasn't been able to finish the deal. And so we'll share the screen and let you guys see this one. I thought this was one of the better answers from the interview. Here he is, a little Deommodore Lenoir with Richard Sherman.
What are your goals this season, and what's the expectations for this defense?
For one, is to win the Super Bowl, because I feel like, we got there too many times. But just being NFC and, going to the Super Bowl, I feel like we always just getting there. I'm done trying to talk about it. I'm trying to win. I feel like that's the goal, a team goal. But my personal goal, of course, be all pro, Pro Bowl, and just be CB1.
I love that. And you're going to get there. What?
Two good corners talking ball. It's always kind of cool when you get guys who play the same position talking to each other. Demo also talked to Richard Sherman about his favorite play of his career. This is kind of interesting too. Here's a little Lenoir about his favorite play of his entire NFL career to date.
You've been in this league 5 years now, or going on 5 years.
So,
what's your favorite play?
Favorite play, I would say the interception versus the Cowboys.
Yeah.
In the playoffs, because I felt like that was like my coming. Like, I made a name for myself that game. I feel like a lot of people was counting me out. They was talking about me having a decent season. Like, it wasn't really like I would say a strap corner. I would say I was just like kind of getting my feet wet with everything, trying to learn the game, trying to just make plays that I needed to make. And then I feel like that moment was like my breakout moment.
No question about it. I mean, it was definitely a big game, a big play, and it never seemed like the moment was too big for you. It never seemed like the playoffs were different. Honestly, it seemed like the playoffs were easier. You had more books in the playoffs than anytime.
Yeah, it was more. It was more like I gotta get everybody off my back, because I feel like a lot of people was coming at me, because like the game before I gave up a touchdown to AJ Green, and it was like his retirement moment. It was like a crazy touchdown. Ain't gonna lie, I was like, I mean, I hit you up after that one. It was crazy. So I was like, I really wasn't feeling that. And then the fans was coming at me, they kept coming at me. So I was just like, man, I'm about to just go and like all their tweets. I started liking all the tweets, and then I came back Seattle game I had a pick, and then I was like, nah, I still got more in the tank. We got two more weeks. I know we finna go to the bowl. And then came Dallas game, and like you said, like we was talking about it earlier, you know, when you watch guys, you pick up certain tendencies, and I seen the tendency, and I just took it and ran with it.
You know, I'm shocked by that one. I did not think he was going to say that. What did you guys think, Richard? What did you guys think Deommodore Lenoir's favorite play would have been? I mean, to me, it comes to mind immediately. Like immediately. I might have to put this one up on. I'm gonna look on Twitter for this. If you guys are thinking the way I'm thinking, it's the Lenoir hit on DeAndre Swift in the Eagles game in Philly where he went night-night on DeAndre Swift. Barry says, Larry, you should consider seeing a doctor for your perspiring issues, unless it's hotter than hell in the room that you are in. Perspiring like that could be a circulatory issue. No, it's not. It's a studio that I'm in is in my garage, and it's Qatar in here. I mean, it's like I'm in the Middle East out here. I've got a new cooling system that I've just ordered, but I unfortunately don't have it yet. So yes, I'm sweating profusely. Sorry. But it's a great studio most of the year. It's great in the winter. It's great in the spring. It's great in the fall. It's this late summer heat. I'm out here in the East Bay, and it's hot. It's hot. It's hot. I would say in the studio, it's probably a solid 90, 95 to 97. So no, I'm not I'm not having circulatory issues. I actually am sitting in a very, very hot studio. And most of you, I don't know if you know this, but most radio studios are very, very cold. Very, very cold. Chromie's Crew says, tell us the truth, Larry. We can handle it. I'm in 110 degrees right now. No. But a couple other thoughts though before we get out of here. We'll be back with you tomorrow night. Tomorrow and Thursday we'll be on the radio side. Tomorrow on Niners Nightly, JT the Brick is going to stop by. The Brick will check in with Mr. Raider. I haven't even talked to him about the passing of Raider Mort. Oh my God, JT's probably, I know, crushed by that. But we'll talk some Raiders. We'll talk some Raiders and Niners tomorrow night with JT the Brick. So join us tomorrow night. That one's on the radio. Yeah. TG says, Larry is in a sauna. Thank you. Tommy Huxley says, it's only 72 degrees in Danville. I'm telling you, I'm in my garage, and it's, my garage is not insulated. So it's fine. It's usually fine. I have an insulated studio, but it's not that insulated, and it's pretty damn hot today. So, and it gets hotter and hotter as the day goes on. Anyway, so I apologize for the extra perspiration, but it is hot in here. I would say it's got to be at least 95 in here. A couple other thoughts though on the Niners that I think are interesting from today that I want to share with you guys. One, the three guys that I'm so excited about right now, that I think you guys ought to be really excited about, are three rookies: Connor Colby, Drew Moss, and Corey Kiner. Because in the game, Connor Colby gave up 0 pressures in 24 pass plays. Chris Furster told me that he has a lot of confidence in Colby, the same way he had a lot of confidence in Pooney last year. I think Connor Colby, if Ben Barch either gets hurt or doesn't play well, I think Connor Colby could step in and start at guard for the 49ers. He also had a 73.3 run blocking grade. Now, the grades are a little funky because they're one bad play or whatever can change the grade. So I don't know if I believe that I don't put a lot of credence in the PFF grades, but just 24 pass blocking snaps and giving up 0 pressures, there's no ambiguity to that. I mean, that's damn good. And then Drew Moss has looked really good in practice. He had 16 pass plays where he also gave up 0 pressures, and he also had a really good run block grade. So I think the Niners, I know it's easy to look from afar and be like, the Niners, they've abused their offensive line. They don't care. They haven't done anything and all this crap. Last year they got Dom Pooney, who was the best offensive lineman in last year's draft. This year, late in the draft they get Colby. After the draft they get Moss. Colby looks like their future starter at left guard. Moss looks like their future starter at center. That's exciting. I mean, in 2 drafts, they've rebuilt the interior of their offensive line without really investing anything in it outside of 1 third-round draft choice. That's pretty good. Now, do the Niners need tackles? Yes, badly. Burford's not the answer. Maybe Andre Dillard is. Burford had a rough one. I don't think he's a tackle. Pleasance doesn't look like a tackle to me. I think they're going to need to find another tackle, offensive tackle, unless Andre Dillard can do the job, or maybe Isaiah Prince. But Connor Colby and Drew Moss both look good in this first preseason game, and I think the Niners have a couple of offensive linemen that are keepers, which is great news. Great news. The other thing that I loved about this game was that, I love Corey Kiner. I think he's a terrific talent. But Corey Kiner, you never know with rookies. Can they play as rookies? And you say, well, what's the determining factor? Usually the determining factor is, can they pass block? Well, Corey Kiner had a 78.2 pass blocking grade and didn't allow a single pressure the entire game. So if this guy can pass block, I love how hard he runs. I love the heart that he plays with. If he can pass block, Corey Kiner is going to be really nice. I mean, that is a very pleasant surprise that a rookie running back in his first preseason game pass blocked as effectively as Kiner did. So I'm really excited about those 3 guys. As far as practice today, just a couple quick thoughts. 90-minute practice. The Niners had so many guys missing that they skipped the one-on-ones. So there was no one-on-one period today. Who was missing? Bosa, Green, Jennings, Watkins, Stout, Trey Brown, Richie Grant, Jordan James, Garendo, Fabian Moreau. Barely even seen Fabian Moreau. He's been a Niner for so short, and he's been hurt the whole time. Robert Beal, Kevin Givens, Jordan Elliott, Sam Aquinu, and Mikael Williams, all sitting it out today. No Bosa, if I didn't throw him in there. Jacob Cowing did return to practice today, and he looked pretty good. That was great to see. Isaac Garendo, Sam O working on a side field. They're working their way back. It was the final practice for the fans. So fans, I hope you enjoyed the practice. Purdy to Kittle has been a prolific combination this summer. He looked great today. Purdy hooked up with Kittle a bunch. Purdy was 14 of 17 today. Mac Jones was even better. He was 9 for 9. Mac Jones continues to shine. He had a beautiful slant to Junior Bergen today. He hit Ricky Pearsall. He had a deep ball to Robbie Chosen. Hit Robbie Chosen on another intermediate ball. Had an 8-yard dime to Bergen. Mac Jones looks good. So that was great to see. Jeff Wilson looks terrible. Jeff Wilson looks like he's going to be retired here next week. He fell down 3 or 4 times. He's having a hard time keeping his footing. It's just a dead sign that the legs are shot. Jake Moody went 7 for 7 and kicked 2 50-plus yard field goals. Bradley and Nye had a nice sack. Tatum Bethune had a big hit. Robert Saleh told us after practice that Alfred Collins took a major step forward in the Denver game, and Collins was running with the ones at times today in practice. So even though Collins is, doesn't look quite as advanced as CJ West, they love what they're seeing out of Alfred Collins, and he may start. Dom Pooney caught a tip pass from Juice and scored a touchdown today. That was kind of cool. We saw Jacob Cowing, Corey Kiner, and Dallas Flower doing kickoff returns. We saw Bergen and Cowing handling some punts. What else? Kalia Davis, we talked to him after practice. He's excited for his season. We talked to Junior Bergen. I asked him, is there a return man that you have kind of studied throughout your college career, trying to kind of copy a little bit? And he said Percy Harvin. Thought that was kind of interesting. So Marquis Siegel ran with the ones today. I thought that was interesting. And then Ben Barch went out with an injury. I don't think it was serious, but then Connor Colby came in and he ran with the ones. So there was a lot of stuff. Kittle has had a fantastic camp. He has just looked really, really good. I think George Kittle could be, if you're one of these guys that wants to get off to a hot fantasy start, get George Kittle, because they're going to feed him a ton in September, I believe, especially with Demarcus Robinson out. The Niners a little short-staffed. I think you're going to see Kittle involved heavily in the passing game. All right, that is going to do it for us tonight. Anyway, that I'm sorry that I had the the sweating in the middle of the thing. Hope you enjoyed the Jauan Jennings conversation. I would encourage all of you guys to read Tim Kawakami in the SF Standard. It's a really good breakdown. It did sound like it came straight from the Niners. It really did. So when you're hearing quotes like "it's a stalemate," that sounds like it probably came straight from the Niners. Tim guessing that JJ wants a deal that pays him like a top 20 wide receiver, and he wants to be paid north of 20 million per year. Sounds like he was fed that line. The 49ers don't want to give JJ any raise at all, according to the story. And then Tim said, and after all of it, there should be a compromise by August 26th. And he says the Niners will likely tack on another year at $22 million, give him $4 or $5 extra million. And so, Rosenhaus can say, look, my guy, I got my guy, $20 million a year. But in reality, it's a nominal raise. So I think that's probably the most likely outcome, because I don't think they're going to make him play for less, and I don't think they're going to trade him because I think he's worth more to the Niners than he would be in a trade. So there you go. Chromie's Cruises, JJ's a toilet bug. All right. He also says, Larry, in fantasy draft, I'm not taking a tight end till the fourth round. Probably smart, but all I would say is you may want Kittle, especially if you want a tight end that's going to perform early. I think that he's going to see the ball a lot early. And it might be one of those situations where, not that I'm giving people fantasy advice now, but it might be one of those situations where you draft Kittle, he gets off to an awesome start in September because they're feeding him left and right, and then you hawk him. You hawk him to somebody, in October for, 3 other good players, knowing that when Ayuk gets back and Robinson gets rolling and all the Niners weapons are out there together, that Kittle might not be the same fantasy player at that point as he will be in September. Just a thought. Don't listen to me. I've only won the fantasy league once. All right, that's going to do it for us. We're back tomorrow night at 6:00. As I said, tomorrow night, JT the Brick stops by. Thursday night, Dave Lombardi's going to stop by. We'll talk to Dave and get a review of Thursday's joint practice. He will attend that. I will not be heading to Vegas for the joint practice, but I will be talking with Dave after the practice, and we'll play that for you on Thursday night. So listen for tomorrow and Thursday at 6:00 on the radio. Until then, have a great night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Niners Nightly on KMBR's YouTube channel.